Hello and welcome to today's conversation with Dr. Craig Richard, and this is our Educators Edition. Our theme today is sound regulation and the classroom environment, and our focus is really how predictable sound and gentle auditory input may support regulation in learning environments. Our conversation is with Dr. Craig Richard, who is a scientist, educator, and leading researcher in the field of autonomous sensory meridian response, ASMR. Craig is the founder of the ASMR University, which is an educational platform dedicated to exploring the neuroscience and the psychological mechanisms behind ASMR, which is a fascinating subject. Craig's also the author of Brain Tingles, and one of the first books to examine ASMR through a scientific lens, which is available on the ASMR University website and also from the HushAway website. So Craig, thank you for joining us today. It's great to have you
here.
Craig, this is a really important conversation, especially for educators. So teachers are navigating increasingly dysregulated classrooms and often without the time or tools to address the sensory load that children are carrying. Before we talk practically, let's start at the nervous system level. So how does sound influence regulation in a learning environment?
It's really good to be aware of sound in a learning environment because it can be helpful or harmful to learning. Sound is 360. We are always passively listening for near or distant threats. So how we interpret those sounds depend upon how our brain might be wired and what those sounds are. And sound is different from touch or tactile input. That must be close. And even visual input must be right in front of us. But in a classroom, sound surrounds us from all directions. And we're always aware of it, even when we're sleeping, we're processing sound. So the important thing is that sounds can relax us or alarm us, and this can influence learning. For ASMR videos, that sound in the ASMR videos is actually more important than the visual aspect of the videos. Even though ASMR videos are so hugely popular, you'd think, oh, that visual component must be so important. There are many people who play ASMR videos without watching them, meaning they just listen to the audio. But I've never heard of anyone who watches ASMR videos without listening to them. So this sound aspect seems to be really key, that there can be helpful, relaxing sound. For ASMR studies, they show and confirm that the response people have to ASMR sounds and gentle sounds is that it's calming, it's soothing, it's relaxing. And they've confirmed this at the physiological level with research studies where people are experiencing these ASMR sounds and ASMR videos, and their heart rate decreases, their blood pressure decreases, and their brain waves show distinct patterns that confirm relaxation. The other thing about ASMR and these relaxing sounds, which is important for educators, and this has been one aspect of ASMR that has surprised me the most, is when I heard a lot about ASMR, and even when I experienced ASMR, I think of it mostly as helping to relax. I think of it, for me especially, as helping me get one step closer to falling asleep. But that's not true for everyone. There's a lot of people who use ASMR and gentle sounds because it helps them to focus. And they will use it while studying because it may help to block some external sounds, and also because it relaxes their brain and de-stresses their brain. It gives them the ability to focus on that one thing, whatever that task is, that educational task that they're working on. So surprisingly, relaxing and ASMR sounds are reported by a lot of people to help them focus and to help them learn. So overall, relaxing audio or relaxing sounds or a relaxing soundscape in a learning environment can boost learning for some students.
And the World Health Organization produced some stats to say that in an average classroom, the decibels are about 75, and actually the recommended level for learning is about 35. So we know that many classrooms today are probably not intentionally noisy, but they are busy. Movement, scraping chairs, corridor noise, and just unexpected interruptions. Why does overstimulation increase dysregulation so quickly for some children?
Yes, some children are sensitive to a lot of sensory input. So these are children that may be labeled or diagnosed or even self-defined as being highly sensitive, ADD, ADHD, autistic, or even shy. I was a shy kid. And I believe as an adult, I do have ADD or ADHD. And I think those two things are very similar. In fact, all of these things to me are similar because it's all about being overwhelmed by sensory input. When you walk into a classroom, the sights, the sounds that you hear can be very overwhelming for certain people because it seems their brain allows them to process more information than individuals who don't feel overwhelmed in those same situations. And so it seems that brains of certain individuals are not as good at filtering out some of those sounds. And it's hard to understand unless kind of you put it in a simple analogy or give a visual to it. So imagine you walk into a dark room and you have a flashlight. That flashlight will show you very specific things in that room. Contrast that to a lantern. A lantern is going to cast light in all directions and allow you to see everything in the room at once. So let's change this now from this visual analogy to an auditory analogy. Someone walks into a room, and if they hear every sound, the way a lantern reveals everything that you can see, that can be overwhelming to someone's brain, as opposed to another child that walks into a room and can only focus, is really good at focusing on just one voice or one clear sound. They're not distracted by the 30 other sounds that are happening in a room. So this does appear to be something that happens at the neurological level, and that some brains are better at filtering out what appear to be less important sounds and focus on just the most important sounds. But that's not true for everyone. The other thing kind of happen in someone's brain is, even if they're not perceiving excessive amount of sounds, some individuals' brains will perceive specific sounds in a stronger way. That one sound that you hear in someone else's brain appears a lot louder, it appears stronger, or it might just trigger some kind of negative emotion in them. So being conscious of the sounds for all types of brains, all types of individuals in a classroom is very important to minimize these distractions that make it harder to learn.
And when we talk about regulation before learning, is it fair to say that a dysregulated nervous system simply just can't access higher order thinking?
No, I wouldn't say that it can't access it. I think the best way to say it is that it may take longer because of these distractions. And so it takes longer because it might need some assistance. And that assistance could be from internal management, where a child has been coached, has been trained, has been taught how they can try to manage their own focus, how they can try themselves to block out distracting sounds. So that's kind of like an internal management. For educators, they're going to assist with external management. So what are the external sounds? How can they shape and change the environment around children to help them manage this so they can still process higher order learning? So I think of it as the caretakers, this applies to parents, educators who can make changes to the environment, to the soundscape, so it is less challenging for some children.
And you talked about focus and attention and concentration. There's a growing discussion around attention challenges in schools From your research perspective, what is the relationship between sound, attention, and stress?
Yeah, luckily there's been a lot of research around this, and it's been consistently shown that ASMR sounds, relaxing sounds, do help people to relax. That's pretty clear. There are some studies also that show that ASMR and relaxing sounds can help some individuals to focus. And so when we're in a situation, our brains can kind of take in these sounds, and if they're the right sounds at the right volume, with the right kind of consistency, then that can relax us and can help us to focus. I was part of a research study where we did some brain scans of people listening to and watching ASMR videos. And we saw that the regions of their brains that had these receptors to oxytocin were lit up more so than other regions of the brain. And oxytocin is known as a neurohormone that does induce calming effect. It does induce comfort and soothing effects. So it makes sense that perhaps relaxing sounds are helping to release things like oxytocin and perhaps something else like GABA. These are neurotransmitters that are very good at calming the brain. So a quiet place, a place with appropriate sounds, gentle sounds, can help someone to experience ASMR, which can help them to calm down their brain. It can help them to relax and to learn.
And I think that distinction is actually really important. So regulation isn't about making a room quiet, it's about the quality and the predictability of sound. So can you explain why structured auditory environments matter more than simply just turning down the volume?
Yeah, I like what you said about relaxation isn't just about making a room quiet, because silence is an amplifier to any sudden sound. So just visualize a silent room and then drop a pen on the floor. That's going to make half the people in the room just jump. So it is important to have kind of a gentle soundscape going on, an appropriate soundscape, to have ambient sounds that can help to create a more, I think the term I might use is stable sound environment, that it's more kind of buffered. So a great example would be white noise. For a lot of people who have trouble falling asleep, they can't fall asleep to silence because that sudden little sound outside jolts them awake. But if they play white noise or they have a fan on, it gives this steady, consistent sound that masks those abrupt sounds. For a classroom might have some white noise that they don't even need to install. I know in my school where I work, we have a lot of HVACs, and the vents that blow the air in, they create this steady white noise that I think are very helpful to blocking abrupt sounds. But classrooms or other environments can use nature sounds. They could use maybe some fan sounds, might be some gentle music, it might be ASMR sounds. Even the murmur of people. I've created some relaxing audio where if you just have people murmuring in the background, like it's a crowd in the distance, that can create also this soothing environment because it helps to mask any other sounds. And your brain kind of feels like, oh, there's people nearby. I think this is a good time for me to fall asleep because they will prevent predators from getting at me. If you picture this from like an evolutionary perspective. So it is important to have some appropriate sounds in a learning environment that will help mask any kind of abrupt sounds.
And let's talk about ASMR in a classroom context, because it often gets associated with internet culture, the whispering videos that we see, the novelty triggers, the kind of mass-produced ASMR. But when we strip it back to its core, and just what you've talked about, that kind of slow pacing, predictable tone, the gentle auditory cues, how does that fit into a broader sound regulation conversation?
Yeah, I I wouldn't advocate just playing an ASMR video in the background in a classroom, because kind of what you've said is that, and I agree with this, is a lot of the popular ASMR videos are created for mass appeal. They're not created for an individual. They're not created for a specific situation like a learning environment. So there could be some aspects of those that are not appropriate to have as some kind of background soundscape. And I kind of think of this analogy also as like how a public gym allows anyone to work out. And that's great, but they might hurt themselves because there's no one guiding them. There's no one helping them. Contrast that to a personal trainer. A personal trainer is someone who's going to design your workout. They're going to be there for you. They're an expert, and they're going to make sure that you train safely. And so this is the difference between just pulling some audio off the internet versus using well-crafted, designed audio by experts who are aware of the needs of that environment. So you would want your audio to be like a personal trainer. You want it specialized, science-based, safe, kind of prepared by experts. And it also will probably evolve with science. So people creating just stuff for mass appeal, they're looking for what gets the most views, as opposed to what is the most effective. And so designed audio can be reshaped, can be modified over time as the science informs it of, oh, here's a new discovery that this pattern with these sounds for this length of time is the most effective for this type of individual in this environment. And that's the benefit more so of kind of designed sound over just pulling something off the internet.
And at HushAway, we use ASMR informed principles very carefully. And actually our soundscapes are ASMR inspired. So we don't have any kind of exaggerated whispering, not stimulation, but really slow paced soundscapes that really do bring a story to life. The children are the center of the story. So the stories aren't about superheroes, they're about actually putting children in the center of that story. We use predictable language, we use somatic language, and phrases like, you know, let's take a slow moment, or it's okay to feel this way. We use lovely kind of safety words like hush and safe and steady. Body awareness words like notice how you feel, about feeling warm and cozy, and just very clear beginnings and very clear endings. And so the intention is containment and emotional safety, not entertainment. So from your perspective, what makes this approach responsible in an educational setting?
Yeah, you started off, and I think you mentioned that you don't use exaggerated whispering. And that is important, is that there are different types of whispering. Not all whispering is the same. And I think that the term I use for exaggerated whispering is I call it harsh whispering. And it's the type of whispering that you see in horror movies. Like when you whisper to someone, you might be in stress. And so you whisper harshly, you whisper quickly. It's about getting that message across, but you don't want the threat to hear you. And so there is a type of whispering that our brains do perceive as there's a threat nearby. And so it's the kind of fast whispering like this. Okay, I think there's someone over there. Let's go hide. That's quite different from gentle, relaxing whispering, which is a lot more gentle and it's slow. And just if you're able to hear those differences, your brain perceives the first one as, ooh, it sounds like there's a threat nearby. That's why they're talking softly, so the threat doesn't hear them, as opposed to, I'm close to you, therefore you trust me, and I'm giving you some important information. I'm trying to help you. I'm caring for you in some way. You also mentioned, I think, slow-paced soundscapes. And again, it's like you could hear the difference in the whispering, the fast, exaggerated, or harsh whispering compared to just slowing that down. And when things are slow, our brains again perceive them as, oh, there's no threats nearby. Because when there's a threat, speed is important, whether it's speed of running or speed of communication about that threat. So soundscape should be slow. They should feel like, oh, there's no threats nearby. And that just triggers the brain to relax. Also, I like that you mentioned clear beginnings and endings. This is another thing with sounds that alert our brains is they tend to be sudden. So think of someone taking a textbook when your back is turned and then slamming that textbook on the table. You're going to jump. We're hardwired to it because we're not sure if that sound is now going to harm us in some way, whatever made that sound. It must be big, it must be huge if the sound is loud. And if the sound is sudden, then it could be creeping up on us. So informed audio should kind of let the listener know when things are about to begin and even when they're about to end. Is this going to run for 5 minutes or will this run for 20 minutes? In my podcast, I've had some of my listeners tell me they like turning on an audio where they know how long it's going to play. And they'll skip. If it's only 15 minutes, they say, nope, that's not going to help me sleep. I need 45 minutes. So you don't want someone to think when they start listening to a certain soundscape, this is going to last longer than they want it to. And finally, I think, yeah, you mentioned a lot of positive words and words of affirmation. Sometimes what you'll hear about ASMR is that it doesn't matter what you say, it's all about how you say it. And the common expression is, you could read the phone book. Well, that is true to an extent, but words matter. Context matters. You can't tell a scary story in a gentle voice and not expect to kind of take someone out of a relaxed state. And even the words that are chosen must be careful because there could be trigger words or there could be trigger sounds where someone has a strong, what's referred to as misophonic response. There's just some sounds that will not relax their brains and may do the opposite and put them in an alarm state. So yeah, I really liked what you mentioned as you described how informed and tailored the audio is for HushAway.
And let's just kind of keep this practical now for educators, because if an educator is listening and thinking, well, I can't redesign my whole classroom, but I can adjust the sensory environment slightly, what are some things that they could consider or do?
Yeah, I want to use the expression low-hanging fruit, but I don't think that's the right expression. The loudest fruit, the worst fruit. What I mean to say is, I think educators should start with student feedback. Ask the students what are the worst sounds that they're noticing pulls them out of a focused situation. Start with those sounds, because you might think a certain sound is distracting to students, but it turns out none of them notice that. It's the sound you didn't notice that they do notice, and that could be an easy fix. It might be the ticking of a clock. It might be the scraping of the chairs. And like, oh, I'm so used to these that it doesn't matter. But so yeah, I'd start with student feedback. The other thing you can do is then listen on your own, consciously. Like while the classroom is in session, set aside a few seconds, a minute, whatever it is, to listen to the sounds that you may not have noticed before because you were so focused on the students, which is very appropriate, as you should be, that you have to step away from that and focus on what are the sounds in the room that can be fixed, and can they be easily fixed? The scraping of the chairs. Oh gosh, well, I can't afford to buy all new chairs. Well, maybe you could put a little bit of those cheap felt pads on the bottom of the legs. There might be a simple fix for some sounds. Another thing is the echo in the room, which technically is referred to as reverb. And rooms that tend to have a lot of echo will amplify, of course, any abrupt sounds and the distracting sounds. The way to fix the echo and reverb in a room is by not having flat surfaces. Flat surfaces are what bounce echoes back. So this includes something as a carpet. So a carpet appears to be flat, but it's all those little threads, the bumps, the way you can visualize if you got real close to a carpet, that is not smooth at all. A carpet is really good at reducing echo and reverb in a room. Curtains, the undulations in the curtain and the kind of the close-up texture of a fabric, but especially the undulations of a curtain, break up sound and prevent echoes. Another thing is books, and you probably have books. Get some more books. Put up more bookcases if you can. Anything that does not have a flat surface is great at breaking up sound. I would also encourage children and students to have slow and controlled movements, because that's less likely to lead to a chair tipping over, someone slamming into a table, something falling off a table, these abrupt sounds that create a really harsh environment. So if you're organizing them to get into groups, or you're saying everyone go over to that side of the room, remind them to do so slowly and in a controlled way. And what is really helpful to that also is to be that model. Maybe you lead them, maybe you show them. And whenever you move around the room, whenever an educator moves around the room, is to be that model and move around in a slow and controlled way, and also use your voice in a gentle way. You might be thinking often, I need to project my voice to the back, which you need to project it appropriately. But also keep in mind that if everyone is quiet in an appropriate way, then your quiet voice will reach everyone.
And what's really important is, what are the boundaries in a classroom, so in a school? When is sound supportive, and when should schools seek additional intervention?
Yeah, having the ideal soundscape, or what you think is the ideal soundscape, is not going to fix or prevent every situation. There will be times when other interventions should be sought. So sound is supportive when it's helping a student or a class of students, or even a teacher, to meet their goals, to complete whatever tasks and goals they have. But there can be times when disruptions occur and those goals cannot be met. And if they're not being met consistently, then that soundscape that's set up might need to be improved, or you might need to go to some kind of alternate plan, and you should seek some assistance.
And so if we zoom out, this isn't about trends, it's about the environment. So if you were speaking directly to teachers today, what would you want them to understand about sound and regulation on a kind of holistic level?
Yeah, I'd say it's a summary of some of the things I've already mentioned, is that it's not just guesswork that specific sounds are helpful and relaxing. It's a lot of research studies have confirmed that gentle sounds assist with relaxing individuals and helping some individuals focus. That if they're going to use these sounds and incorporate these sounds, that they should be well-crafted sounds. They should be designed sounds, not just something they pulled off the internet. And this includes whether it's sounds for individual students or the whole ambience for the classroom. Another way I tend to think of it is that sounds are like flavors, and everyone has the flavors they like and flavors they dislike, and the flavor I like is not the flavor you necessarily will like. And so the same as it is for sounds. So don't think that your first soundscape is going to be suitable for everyone. It might take some experimentation to find one that does work for most everyone. So just be prepared to be, I guess, a little bit experimental.
Lovely. Thank you, Craig. And thank you for driving this conversation today. We really look forward to exploring more about the fascinating world of ASMR with you. So really appreciate your time today. Thank you. And for educators who are listening, you already understand that behavior is communication. Sound is part of that environment, not silence, not novelty, but thoughtful, predictable auditory structure. And when we regulate the room, we increase access to learning. And that's the conversation that we need to keep having. So thank you everybody for listening, and thank you, Craig, for your time. It's always lovely to have you with us.
Oh, thank you.